Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to class today. Thank you for joining me, whether you're watching live or you're watching the recording. I appreciate you watching. I hope you all were able to take some time and rest for the Labor Day holiday yesterday. The college was closed yesterday, so we were unavailable here. But today is Tuesday, and we're back to the grind, and we are talking about Module 1 in Web 140, which is our HTML and CSS Bootcamp module. Also, right after this live class recording today, I'm going to verify that everybody did their EVA. I think everybody did their EVA. If everybody has done their EVA, I'm going to go ahead and assign your groups for your group project. Otherwise, we're going to wait until tomorrow to assign your groups for your group project. So either later today or tomorrow, you will get the notification about your group assignments. So we can go ahead and get that kicked off and get that going for this this semester. But for today, I want to just kind of walk through just a general approach to how we would do this. I'd like to just kind of walk through and build a website, right, which is not something that we have a whole lot of time to usually do in these live classes. So just as kind of a refresher to help you all, I'm just going to build a site that would kind of mimic the one that I'm asking you to build as your HTML and CSS Bootcamp module project. And if you're in multiple web classes this semester, you will have this assignment or have this module multiple times. The assignments for each of these are a little bit different, right? You have a little bit different logos, and there are a little bit of slightly different requirements between the two. And again, this is just to get your practice up, get your reps in. Right? The more we're able to make sites, the more we're actually able to code and sit down and write things, the better off we are. So I've got my Visual Studio Code open here, and this is actually a fresh instance of Visual Studio Code, because I just got this brand new computer here in my office, and I've only installed Visual Studio Code. I've not installed any of my plugins for it yet, or extensions, I guess is the word. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to just start out by setting up this project using Visual Studio Code, show you kind of my workflow for how I do that, and then just go through just some basics about making a simple website with HTML and CSS. So what I want to do here, first and foremost, is I want to look at getting my extension installed for Live Server. For anything where we're building a website, Live Server is going to be especially useful for you. This allows you to open a server with whatever you're working on right from inside of Visual Studio Code, and it will update and refresh that site every time you save in Visual Studio Code. So if we look all the way over here on the left-hand side of Visual Studio Code, we see we have these different icons. If I hover over them, you see the first one, which looks like two pieces of paper, is Explorer. The second one is Search. The third one is Source Control, Run and Debug, and then finally Extensions. Extension is the last one. It looks like, one square kind of separated off from three other squares. And that's the one we're going to want to click to install our extensions. And there are a ton of extensions installed by default or available for you by default. I shouldn't say installed by default. They're available for you by default in Visual Studio. Right? And we can actually see the one that we're going to use here in the Popular tab, right? This is one that's used a lot. Like if we look here, it says it has 25.2 million installations, which is a lot, right? And it's the Live Server created by Ritwick Day. Bit of a tongue twister for me. If you don't see that here in the popular section, just search live server here at the top. It'll give you some different suggestions. But again, I like to use the one by Ritwick Day. There's a ton of other ones that are really great going through that people have already built for us. We can talk about some of the other ones of these as we kind of need them along the way, or as they become useful to us along the way. But all you have to do is just click the little blue install button here, and it will install it into your Visual Studio Code. This information right here just gives you some information about this extension, how to use it, what to do with it. You'll see how to use it as we are working with it. So that's all well and good. Now I can close this tab, and I can go back to my Explorer tab here at the top. Now the first thing that we see here is Open Folder. It's telling me that I have not yet opened, or I've not yet created or opened a folder in my project. So I like to take all my projects and put them in their own folders. So what I've done here is I've created just a little folder on my machine for fall 2022 projects. And I can create new folders in here. Right? Just add a new folder, name it, and that's all well and good. Right? That's one way that we can name a folder. If we pull up our terminal, which we do that by going to Terminal and then New Terminal. Here we can use this like the command prompt. It is Windows PowerShell, so we can use this like the command prompt. If I go to my folder here, I see I can run E to get into E, and then I called that folder Fall 2022 Projects. And I forgot to CD there. Let's CD Fall 2022 Projects. Whoops, and I was trying to Linux a Windows, actually. I don't need backticks. I was trying to MySQL a Windows here, I think. I need quotes and not backticks. There we go. So now I'm in that folder. So if I run my dir command in that folder, there's nothing in there. Right? We see the folder here, there's nothing there. But I can run my make dir. And then just type a folder name like Bootcamp Site. And that would be just like doing it from here, right? Like we can open this window back up. We see Bootcamp Site is there now. And so we're making our Bootcamp site. Or I have a folder for my Bootcamp site. Right, again, that's just the same as going here, right-clicking, creating a new folder, giving it a name. All that kind of fun stuff. But if you want to do everything from Visual Studio Code and you know a little bit about the command line, you definitely can. So now I'm going to open this folder that I just created. So we'll navigate to it here. It's Fall 2022 Projects, Bootcamp Site, and select the folder. And now we have this folder selected. Yes, I trust the authors. I am the authors. And you're always met with this Getting Started tab. You can close this tab if you want. Right? It gives you the options for creating a new file or opening a file. But we're going to do it slightly different. So over here in my Explorer now, I see that I've opened my Bootcamp Site folder. Right? It says Bootcamp Site here. If I zoom into that, wrong key. If I zoom into that to where you all can see that a little better, you can see it says Bootcamp Site folder. And we can see these icons here to the right. New file, new folder, refresh Explorer, and collapse folders. So what I can do from here, right, is I can add a new file. And I'll call that file index.html. So now I have an index file that's in my project folder. If I go here and go into my Bootcamp site, I can see I have an index.html file here in my project folder. Now what I might want to do is I want to go ahead and add my HTML skeleton in here to get my boilerplate in there. So we're going to use the little shortcut hack in order to be able to do that. Since I've already saved this as a .html file based on how I built this, right? It knows it's a .html file. It knows that I'm working in HTML. So I can take advantage of Emmet, E-M-M-E-T, to build my skeleton for me. So in order to do that, I just have to enter the exclamation point one time. So that's Shift 1. And we see it's given me this little pop-up menu here for an Emmet abbreviation. Single exclamation point. I hit enter on my keyboard while that pop-up is up there, and it fills out the HTML skeleton for me. I can come in here and I can go to my document, and I can change my document title to whatever I want it to be. Now, another thing that I could do here, right, is I got an image downloaded that I'm going to pull into the project. Right, so I went and got a logo a little bit ago so I could make it more accurately mimic the Bootcamp site that you all are working on. And I want to pull that into my project. So I'm just going to copy it from where it's downloaded. Just right click and select copy, and I'll paste it in this Explorer window. And you'll see that when I do that, you might have noticed it up here in my Explorer if you're a eagle-eyed viewer there. I now have logo.png up here. And if I go there, I can see the logo here. It's just this little sample logo from a website. I've also already built a color palette based on this image that I'll be using. All right, I just took this image, uploaded it into coolers.com, and it gave me the big colors out of it that we can use as a color palette. So I have this up over here on my other monitor that we can reference a little bit later. But now I have this logo here that I can use. Now, one thing that I might want to do is that it'll just change the path to my logo, is I might want to add a folder here for images, right? Beside that new file button up here, we have a new folder button. I can add an images folder and then just drag that logo into that images folder. It'll ask me, you want to do that? Yes, I do. We'll move it, and now it's in that folder. And if we go into our GUI here, we see we now have an images folder. If we go in there, the logo's in there, right? These aren't different Explorer windows I'm pulling up. They're all the same Explorer window, right? You can see that if you pay attention to the path here, you see it's the exact same path. I'm also going to do that with my style sheet. So I'm going to add a little folder here, style. Just add a folder called style. Looks like I accidentally put that inside of my images folder, right? If we go over here, we see images, and then there's my style folder in there. If you do that by accident, you can always drag it out. And if I drag it out just anywhere down the way here, it drags it into the root directory of the project. So now I have a style folder here. If I click on that style folder to highlight it, I can put my information in here. A lot of the times when you see a website, it'll have more than one CSS style sheet in it, right? Especially once we kind of work with some different things down the way and we are using Bootstrap and all these other things. You might need multiple CSS files. So people will use a style folder and put all of their different CSS files in that. That's what I'm going to do here. While that folder is highlighted here, I'm going to click the Add File button. You can see by default that adds it into the file. This will be called style.css. And if we go back to our Explorer window now, we'll see two folders, images and style. Inside that style, we have style.css, and it is blank. Right, we can also see that we have three tabs open up here now. One for our index.html, one for our style.css, and then our logo. We can close that logo. We're not going to be going in and editing it, but everything else we'd kind of need open. And we can start setting up our site. So I'm going to set up my site in a general way that I like to set up my site. In my HTML here, and I'll zoom in while I write this code. I'm going to use my semantic HTML that we discussed in Web 115 to kind of build out some different sections to our site. So first, I'm going to build a header. We'll use our header tag. Once we write our opening tag, it closes our tag by default. If you'll remember, our header denotes the header section of an element. In HTML, it's a semantic tag for that. We can use multiple headers on a single page, right? In the manner that we're doing it here, our header is for the entire page, but you can also have a header for a particular section, right? So our header can be used in multiple different ways. The next thing that I might want to write is a main, right? So I'll add a set of main tags in here. When we're talking about semantic HTML, a main denotes the main section of the site. And a page can only have one main on it. So this is the only time that I can use this main tag set here on this page. And finally, right, just to create my general structure, I might want to include a footer, like so. Right, so now in the body, I have a header, I have a main, and I have a footer, which works pretty well. Right, and so this is establishing my general template. This is one of those general templates that I like to work with. Because, most sites kind of have this same look to it, where it has a header, it has a footer, and it has some kind of content in the middle. Right, this is a pattern that we see a lot. So just starting with this set of semantic tags helps us get to that point. Right, so up here we can put header information, we can put a nav, we can put a logo, we can put our logo, right, whatever we want to do. This is for content, and then our footer is for our footer information, maybe a secondary navigation, some other content, whatever. Right, so what I want to do, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Control S to save this. I need to link this website to this CSS file so my browser knows, okay, I need to go over here to this file and get this CSS information. Whoops, wrong button. So in order to do that, right, in my head here, I am going to add some new lines, right? I'm up here below or above my closing head title or closing head tag and below my title. And I'm going to add a link tag. So this is going to be opening gator mouth, right? Less than. Link. href is going to reference where my style.css file is. So it is in the style folder. And that is style.css in that style folder, right? So the first part of the path here denotes the folder in the root directory that we're in, the style folder. The second part is the file itself, right? So then I'm going to tell my browser that this is a style sheet, rel equals style sheet. And finally, what type of style sheet it is. So type equals text/CSS. And our link tag is a self-closing tag. So I'm going to make sure I finish off that one tag here with our / and our greater than symbol. And so with that, our HTML file is connected to our CSS file. Now, if we were to save here, we can prove that, right? Like if I were to go in here and comment out this line where we just added that link reference, we'll save, we'll go over here to our style.css, and we'll go ahead and add like all of our usual things that I like to add here. My reset code and all that kind of fun stuff, right? Like if you remember back to Web 1.15, one of the things that we talked about was the fact that our browser applies some styles to things by default. So if we want to have more control over that, we need to reset them. Right, so I'll start with my asterisk selector. I will make this a margin of 0, a padding of 0, and a font family of sans serif. And so our asterisk selector is a wildcard selector. It selects every element in the DOM and applies these rules to everything. Right? So no margin, no padding, font family sans serif. Now, if we do this, we have to remember that we have to add margin, padding, and all that other kind of fun stuff to our elements individually as we create them. But if we do it right, then it should be relatively simple. So we're going to save this. And I'm also going to put a background color on here. If you'll remember back when we're putting a background color on a site, we do that to the body. The background color here is going to be, let's see here. I think that dark red that's in our logo is probably a good color. Let me get my colors over here. That's 931010. So that's hashtag 931010 for that dark red. And so we'll save that. And so by default, that should change the background color. But at this point, we commented out the link to our style sheet. So if we run this file, right? So in my HTML file, I'm just going to right click somewhere random. And we see here, open with live server. And we'll click that. And it'll tell me that it started a live server on localhost. And it'll tell me a port. So that means on my local host, I have a port open. That is this site. Here it is. And we see there's nothing there. All right, if we right click and we view the page source, we can see that we have our link here to our style sheet, but it's commented out. All this JavaScript here was injected by the live server thing. It's fine. It doesn't mean anything. That's just refreshing the page when it's saved in Visual Studio. So speaking of that, if we go back here and we take this comment off, and we save our page, right? When our page is unsaved, we have this little white dot on it. When we save it, that white dot goes away. We go back to our Bootcamp site, and now it's dark red. Because that connection's been made to our style sheet by our HTML. And so now I can go through and start working on different stuff here, right? I can put my header in, I can put my footer in, and all that kind of fun stuff. I can start to style things up, Right, so let's do that. I'm going to go into my style file. I have 3 element selectors here that I can focus. My header element selector, my main element selector, and my footer element selector. So in here, I'll start off by focusing my header element selector. Right, so that's header with no hashtag or period in front of it, right? Because it's an element selector. Remember, we use a hashtag for our ID selector and a period for our class selector. But we'll give this a background color. We'll make this the lighter red that was in our palette from our logo, which is EA. (3A) 03. Right, that's that lighter, brighter red from there. We'll give it a height of, let's say, in fact, let's make it a minimum height, min dash height of 300 pixels. And by default, our element is going to be full width. So since we want it full width, that's all well and good. So we can save that, go back to our live site, and now we have our red bar header at the top. We can go in and we can add a bar for the middle, and we can add a thing for the bottom for our footer, right? Our middle is our main. So we'll add a rule for our main here. So we'll use our main element selector. We'll add a background color here. The color in the logo is white, but it isn't quite pure white, so we'll use that sort of kind of off-white there. So it is FE instead of pure white, which would be FF. We will give it we're going to give this one a width because we don't necessarily want it to be full width. I'm going to call it maybe 80%. Width of 80%. For those of you who are also in the Web 215 class, in that class, one of the things that we'll be talking about next week as we progress into Module 2 in there, after this, is responsive units in web development. So we'll be talking about percentages, rems, ems, all that kind of fun stuff, right? For now, we use percent here, and percent is just a portion of our viewport. Or actually, that's not quite true because it's a portion of whatever the parent container is of this element. However, the parent container of this is the body tag, and the body tag is 100% full width. So this is going to be 80% of the full width of the site. And so we will also add a minimum height here, a min height of, let's say, 600 pixels. And we'll do our old margin trick to center it up. So that's margin, colon, 0, space, auto. Right? So it's 0 margin on the top and bottom, auto margin on the left and right. So it'll push it over as far as it possibly can from both the left and the right, subsequently centering it up. So we'll save this, visit our site again, and now we can see our content area, right? You could start to see like this site take form, right? Now, since we set a min height on this and not just a standard height size, that means if the content that we put inside this box causes it to become bigger than the minimum height that we set, it'll grow accordingly. Another thing that we might want to do, since we're going to be putting content in here, is to adjust the padding. Right? So to make things easier, one of the things that we talked about is to do box sizing border box. So let's add that line to our asterisk selector here. Box dash sizing border box. So that means when we size everything and we say width, the width will be counting the full width of the element, including the border, instead of the width being the inner element, and then you're adding on the padding and adding on the border, like we've talked about previously in dealing with the box model, right? You know, we've said in the past in other classes that box sizing border box helps us to break the box model and make something that's a little bit more understandable. And we'll also just put a little bit of padding here in main, because we're going to add some text here in a bit. Padding, let's say 24 pixels. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and we'll make our footer here. So that will be footer. Just like that. We'll give it a background color. I want to go for this kind of gray pink that we have here. So that's C9, B6, B6. And so that's our footer color now. We'll give it a little bit of a height. We'll say 500 pixels. We can make this min height if we want to. In fact, let's do that. Min dash height. And since this is going to be full width, we want to make it full width as well. In fact, we need padding on all of these elements, right? So the smarter way to add padding here, if you want to add something that's going to be the same across all of elements of a certain type, remember that you can target multiple elements at once. So I'm going to cut this out of here. And I'm going to create one set of rules that's for all of these things. For the header, for the main, and for the footer. So that's going to be header, comma, main, comma, footer. So now whatever I put in here is going to impact all three of these. I can put in one reference to the padding, and now 24 pixels of padding will be applied to the header, the main, and the footer. Just like that. So once we save, that'll update my site here. We can see, you know, kind of what's going on here. Right, just the basic website sort of layout. One of the things that we might want to do is have a bit of a separator, maybe between our header and this part, or the footer and our middle part here, right? Because that looks kind of rough. One of the ways that we'll often do this is by adding a bottom border, right? So if I want to go to my header here and add a bottom border to it, border dash bottom, I can make it some other color, right? Let's use that same silver pink that we just used, border bottom. So that's going to be color. So in our border shorthand, we do the color first, we do the size of the border second, and finally we add the type of border. So that's going to be hashtag C9, B6, B6. We'll make this 12 pixels tall, and we will make this a solid border, right? So just like that. Now when we look at our site, we have a little border there. Right, I might want to make this a little thicker. I might want to make it a little thinner. Right, it's going to be up to me. I think I actually want to make that a little bit thicker. So right now it's 12 pixels. Let's triple it. Let's make it 36 pixels. Right, and so when we save that, we have a nice thicker border there to give us a bit of a demarcation into that. And our footer's down here, and we have our content here. All right, we can start to see a site kind of emerge. Now, the main section might look a little short to you now. Right? It might not look that great because the main section's a little short. But remember, we used min height instead of just height. So as we add more material, it will grow taller, which is a good thing. Let's put our image in. Let's put that in, and we're going to put that in the header. Right, so I'm just going to add my image here to my site. So this is img src. The path to that is going to be images/logo.png. Alt text. We want to add our alt text here. Our alt is going to be, what we want our user to get out of this. In this case, our logo is Harumi Restaurant, Sushi and Ramen. So we can put that in our alt text here. Harumi Restaurant, Sushi and Ramen. So now somebody reading a screen reader can have that same information communicated to them. And image is a self-closing tag. So we can add that in there like that. Once we save this, we can look at our live site and we can see it on our live site. There it is. And we notice a couple things. A block level element, right? All the other elements that we've been working with so far, our header, our main, our footer, these are block level elements. An image is an inline element. Or at least it is until I tell it to make it an inline element. So what I might want to do here is I might want to go in, right? Find my image, add an ID to it. We'll add an ID of logo to it. Right, so now I can reference it in my CSS, and we'll go ahead and save that. I can reference it in my CSS by this ID selector, hashtag logo. And I can go ahead and try to center it up, margin 0 auto. And I can go ahead and try to make it smaller, width 50%, height auto. But it's not going to do anything. Right? If we go back, we see I saved everything. Nothing has changed. And that's because I need to make this display block. And I also want to make that smaller because that's going to be 50% of the entire page width. So I want to make it like 20% instead of 50%. So once I add this display block, then it's going to be able to center my logo up using the margin trick, and there it is, right? It's a lot smaller. We can probably go even smaller with it. One of the things that we'll notice is that as we resize our site, it gets smaller because of that. Because of how we're using that responsive unit there, looking for percentage and all that kind of fun stuff. Another thing that I could do here, since this is min height and not a set height, is I can go ahead and add my navigation to this. For our nav, I'm going to do something a little bit different than I have before. I'm going to use a nav semantic tag here. Under normal circumstances, one thing that we might do is we might just take and say, okay, we'll use an unordered list, and we'll do it that way. Here, I can use a nav for this, right? So we have nav tags, open and close. In here, I can kind of make whatever I want with this. And I can still use list items in my nav, right? So if I wanted to, I can make this a list item. ahref equals hashtag, because we don't actually have a link. Target equals blank. Home, right? Or whatever we want to say. So we'll just take this list item. We'll copy it a few times. C, V, V, V. And we'll just change what they say about menu, and we'll make this last one to a contact page. We'll call it contact. All right, so we'll save that. We go to our live site. We'll see that we have these links here. We see that they still look like unordered lists. But now it's highlighted as a nav instead of just an unordered list, so it's special. In our CSS, we can take and we can focus our nav. Use our greater than symbol to denote that our list item is a child of our nav. But I also want to do something else here before I get into that. I'm going to make this a grid, right? So I'm going to make this a nav to be a display grid. And we're going to make our grid template columns to repeat. And I always get these backwards. I think I want to repeat. I want to do my frame width first, which is 1 frame 5 times. I think that's what I want to do. I always get that backwards, but we'll find out if I got it forwards. I must have still got it backwards. So instead of repeat 1 frame 5 times, I want to repeat 5 times 1 frame. And there we go, right? That's what we're looking for there. And that's a little bit bigger because of the stuff that's being added to our list items here. We'll fix that in just a moment. Right, because I can take and nav greater than li to say that, you know, that focuses any child, any li child element that belongs to a nav. Again, Web 215, we go a lot deeper into this. We're going to take off that text decoration, decoration, none, background color. We can give it a little background color, or we can just make it, we can make it the same color as our bottom border there if we wanted to, right? That might be interesting. So we can make that hashtag C9, B6, B6. And so if we save this now, we can go back here and have a quick look, and we can see it in action. Let's see. Lists. I need to set my list style type to also equal none. Text decoration takes the line out from under the link. The list style type takes away the dot. And we are using 4 list items here instead of 5. So what I want to do here is, I don't need that 5 times, I need that 4 times, so it spans all the way across. There we go. We can add some padding to these list items, right? Padding, 12px. We can add, what else can we add here? I mean, really, we could take the main out of here for padding, just so it goes all the way to the edge. And then text, we can align the links, text, align, center. Although we might have to, we'd have to do that in the actual links there, I believe. So we'll do that. save that, give that a nice save. And I accidentally took that out of main instead of header. There, I want to take that out of header and not main. So it's all the way across. Beautiful. That's the kind of thing I was looking for there. If I want to ensure my logo up here has a little bit of padding between it, although I like this look here, I can add a little margin there. I can replace 0 in my margin 0 auto with any other number, right? But instead, I'm going to want to go nav to list item to link, and we'll make this text align center. And that will, or that should, line that up on the center. Let's try it here in the list item. See if it does that there. This might be one of those little funky things there. Yep, there we go. In the list item is what we want. So we can keep it there. Something else that we might want to do is to change our line height. But that is technically, it's technically centered in here. It just looks like it's off-centered because of the border that's down below. So one of the things that we could do there instead is just change that border bottom height to be something smaller than that, maybe to just be 12 pixels. And we could also make our padding bottom be 0 pixels, but I don't want to do that here. Right? So there's that. So we have a double thick border on the bottom. We have our links here. We can use our hover pseudo class to give that a hover style, right? So nav to li:hover. So when we hover over it, we can give it a different background color. Background color. I might want that to be the dark red, right? So that would be hashtag 931010. Color. White, and this actually might not work because it's for the children of this, which is a link. So I might actually have to, I might have to do this a little bit differently. And then font, weight, bold, or bolder. Right, so now when we hover one of these, and yeah, that's not quite working because the color there is applied to the link and not the menu item. So we could work with that just a little bit. Let's see here. That's nav to li hover a. Getting a little bit complex here, right? And we're kind of going above and beyond what I'm expecting of you in your project, right? So don't worry about that so much. But we should be able to put that there, and that should work for us. And we see that there now. Right, so that looks pretty good. We can change that interior color as well if we focus that similarly, right? Nav to list item, and then A color. We'll make it just we'll make it black by default. Right, so now when we do that, we get black links there instead of blue links. So since we're running short on time, we'll just do some other quick examples here. I'll add some H1s into... I'll add an H1 here into the body. Right, so in our main here, we'll add an H1. Remember, you always start with your H1s and then you go in order based on, you know, whether or not that's a subtopic of what you've already done. So this is H1. Welcome to our restaurant. Or even Harumi restaurant. Right, and then from here we can just put a little paragraph of text. Let me grab a little bit of lorem ipsum to put in here, just so we can have some text to put on there. Like so. And so now I have a paragraph and I have an H1. We'll save that. And we can see it over here. Right, we can adjust that CSS the way that we've always done, right? Like if I want to focus my H1, we can line that up, text dash align, center, font size 3 VW, save that. VW is a viewport width. That's another one of those things that we'll be talking about. Makes it just a little bit bigger there, but also as I shrink it down, it'll shrink accordingly to my, and we see that little, this little thing what we'd fix with media queries, which we'll save that for Web 2.15 instead of trying to fix that here since we're short on time. But we can see that there. For our paragraph, we can add a bit more margin around the outside of that. Margin, maybe 24 pixels. Make a font size, make that font a little bit bigger. We'll say 24 pixels here as well. Let's just see how that looks, right? And we've got our information here. And we can start to do other stuff in here as well. All right, let me just do a quick check here. I want to check, I've got our class open here. Let me check to see what all of the requirements are for this. HTML skeleton, 3 different heading levels. We've done an H1 here, so you need 2 more. So we've done an example of a H1 heading level. We've done an example of a paragraph. 2 pictures. Heading should be a different color than that. That's okay. A heading section with a basic menu. We've done that. Footer section with a copyright notice. We need to do that. In our footer, in order to add a copyright notice, we would just, we'd add a paragraph, right? So it's going to be a paragraph. And it's going to be ampersand copy semicolon. That gives me that copy C circle thing. Mr. Ramsey 2022 or whatever we want to do there. So now that's there. We might want to give this an ID or a class. I'll give it the ID of copy. So now I can go into my CSS here, focus the ID of copy, center it up, which will be text, align, center. Maybe make it color, hashtag FE. Right, so now we have our copyright notice there. We want to make, so you want to make this color different from this color, and then it wants you to add another image, and then it also wants you to add a menu. And so I'm going to let that be up to you all, how you want to add that menu. I can tell you some good suggestions are tables, right? I think an HTML table would be useful for that. Other stuff there as well. So that's all that I'm going to do for you for this one for today. You know, we got a good start here, right? Like, this looks like a real website. Like, if I went to a website that looks like this, I would not be confused. I would say, well, that looks like a site. So this is a really good start. And it should give you all enough of a foundation to easily work through the rest of your Begin Here module. I will be assigning your teams either later today or tomorrow, based on whether or not everybody's got their EVA completed yet. That's all that I have for you for this one. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.